There is a way that is right, but are you moving in that way? Join me for this week's Sunday School lesson. Thanks for joining me for this week's Sunday School lesson. I'm Pastor McCrary, and if this is your first time watching the Newfound Faith channel, I'll ask you today, follow the Newfound Faith channel, set the alert notification as well so that you don't miss a wonderful Sunday School lesson like this one. I'll also ask that you like this week's lesson and then share this week's lesson with somebody somewhere. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, feel free to leave your question. Feel free to leave your comment. I enjoy it. I love being able to teach about faith, preach about faith. I enjoy being able to talk about faith as well. In our Sunday School lesson this week, we are going to be taking a look at the book of Proverbs. We're going to be looking at the Proverbs of Solomon, which are wise words which were directed to the youth. Throughout the book of Proverbs, you'll notice a phrase, my son, or you will often see my children. Solomon, I want you to understand that he was not speaking to his literal son or to his literal children. Solomon, he was speaking to those who were younger than him. Solomon, he was of old age here, and he had this desire for the youth to go in the way of wisdom. And we'll see that in the opening verses of our Sunday School lesson this week, where Solomon encouraged the youth to receive his sayings. Solomon said that should one heed his wise words, they would not stumble. And again, this was so important to him that you'll see where Solomon, that he said to the youth there to take firm hold of his instructions and to not let go of them. Solomon, he's the perfect person to share these words of wisdom. And the reason why he is the perfect person to share these words is not simply because he had received wisdom from the Lord, but because of what he chose to do in his life. You see, over in 1 Kings and in the 11th chapter of 1 Kings, we're told in that scripture that Solomon made a foolish choice. He loved Gentile women, which the Lord had instructed the children of Israel not to do. So Solomon, in this love, we'll see where Solomon, he committed a great sin. We'll see where he moved sinfully. Scripture, it tells us there that Solomon, that he had over 700 wives, that he had 300 concubines, and when he was old, we're told that his wives turned his heart away from God to their gods. And in turning away from the Lord, scripture, it shows us there that Solomon, he built high places of these gods for his wives so that they could go and make offerings to their gods. So in other words, that they can go and worship and serve their gods. And Solomon, he joined in. Scripture tells us that he went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Yes, the man who had built the temple of God, who had built the first temple, he had fallen into a very deep pit of sin. And in both the book of Proverbs and over in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon, he speaks about that pit and how it wasn't a pleasant place to be in, how there was no joy living separate, living apart from the Lord. And Solomon, he shares his firsthand experience of that in both the book of Proverbs and over in the book of Ecclesiastes, where he did not want anybody else to make the choice, to make the decision to live separate, to live apart from the Lord. Solomon in the book of Proverbs, he did not want the youth, those who were younger than him, he did not want them to waste their lives choosing to live sinfully. Which is why we see there in the 14th and in the 15th verse, where Solomon encourages the youth to not take the path of the wicked, to not enter into it, to turn away from it, to avoid it at all cost. You see, Solomon, he understood very well that there are two ways in which one can choose between living in: the way of wisdom or the path of wickedness. Over in the 14th chapter of Proverbs and the 12th verse, Solomon, he said that there is a way that seems right to a man, but that way is a path that leads to death. So Solomon, again, he understood what we see Jesus talk about, what Jesus sums up perfectly over in the 11th chapter of John's gospel, where he spoke about one who chooses to move in the way of wisdom. They move in the light or during the day. And because they can see where they're going in the light, they don't fall into a pit. However, there's another way. There's the path of wickedness, right? And in the path of wickedness, Jesus, he said in that scripture that one is moving in darkness. And because they are moving in darkness without the light, they don't know where they are going. And because they can't see where they are going, they will fall into a pit. On multiple occasions, Jesus, he said that he's the light of the world, and he invited anyone to follow him. So to be very clear about this, God's way is the way of wisdom. And the reason why God's way is the way of wisdom is because God's way is the truth. God's way has to be the truth. He has to be the truth. And the reason why he has to be the truth is because God, he created all things known and unknown. The Lord, he established the laws of existence. He established his rules. So God, because he created everything, all that is known, all that is unknown, as Paul said over in the book of Colossians, God has to know his creation inside and out. So you and I, our knowledge is incredibly limited. Sure, we can theorize and we can hypothesize about this creation, but all of that is an educated guess. And even in our research, even in our science experiments, we're still making educated guesses. So when it comes to moving in the way of wisdom, what should we do? Well, we should follow God's instructions. We should heed God's instructions. And again, this is something that Solomon said in the opening of the book of Proverbs, where in the 7th verse, Solomon, he said that the fear of God is the beginning of knowledge, but the fool despises wisdom. The fool despises God's instructions. So the way of wisdom, again, it is God's divine truth. And it is filled with so much light that again, we will not stumble. But the way that seems right to a man is a way that is absent of the truth. And because it is absent of the truth, there is no light in it. There's nothing but darkness. And when you wander around in the dark, you are lost. And that's a very frightening situation to be in spiritually. And what's truly frightening today is that there are many today who are wandering in the dark spiritually. And we can actually see it in their actions and in their activity. We see it a great deal right now. And again, it is terribly frightening. And so with that in mind, Solomon will see him again encouraging and even warning there, speaking to the youth, where he's pleading for the youth to heed his words and to keep them in their hearts, as they are life to those who find them and life to those who live by them. And even more there in the closing verses of our Sunday school lesson this week, Solomon, he tells us how to go about if we have the desire to take part in living that is godly living. We'll see there where Solomon, he first off says there that one should guard their hearts with great diligence. To guard your heart, Solomon is talking about protecting your heart, protecting your spirit. We have to have much concern about our soul, the health of our soul. Many of us, we have great concern about our physical health and even our mental and our emotional health, which is absolutely wonderful. We should care about our physical condition and our mental condition and our emotional condition as well. But what about the spirit? Again, the spirit is the engine of our being. And if your spirit is in poor health, then you yourself in whole, you're going to be in poor health as well. And the spirit, we should understand, the spirit is the first place that the devil attacks. The spirit is the first place that the wicked and the evil tries to destroy, because if your spirit is destroyed, then again, you are crushed, you are destroyed. Now, after Solomon said that, we'll see where Solomon encouraged the youth, encouraged us not to be deceived by a deceitful mouth, but rather be focused, be obedient, look straight ahead. These are truly wise words coming from, again, a man who had firsthand experience of living the sinful life, of living apart from the Lord. And I would tell you that every believer today ought to be able to share such wise words as well, because we had sin in our life at one point in time. And guess what? None of us are perfect today. We still fall into temptation. And there is so much of that in the world today. There's so much temptation in the world. There are so many distractions in the world today. And again, we're seeing that right now. We are seeing sin at work, trying to lure us away from moving in a godly manner, to where God has instructed us that we should love him with our whole heart and that we should love our neighbor as we love ourselves. But we see where sin is trying to move today to get us to act out of character, to act in a manner that is not godly. It wants us to go down the path of wickedness. It wants us to go down the dark path. It wants us to fall into the pit that has been there, that man has seemingly been trapped in for so long, where we despise each other because of the color of our skin, where we despise each other because of the way that we talk, because we despise each other today because of where we may live or where we may be from, when that should not be the case. We should be living in a manner where we love the Lord with our whole heart, to where we love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And if we were to actually do that, we would be moving in spirit and in truth. We would be living by and with sincere faith. Our actions, it would show that we actually believe in the Lord. And that is what is missing today. Our actions, they are lacking faith. There are many of us today who will say that we are a child of God, but we're on the front lines of moving against another person out of bitterness and out of hate. And that should not be the case. We need to get back on path. We need to get back on track. And the way that we do that is by not being distracted by the temptation, not being distracted by sins luring us away, but by being focused on God's instructions and heeding his instructions. Will you do that today? I certainly hope that you will, especially if you're in the world today saying that you're a child of God, especially if you're in the world today saying that you are a Christian. All right. So that is our Sunday school lesson this week, a very powerful Sunday school lesson this week, which again, I hope that you will like and that you will share with somebody somewhere. And again, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have anything that you wish to add to this week's Sunday school lesson, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. Okay. All right. So I thank you for joining me for this week's Sunday school lesson. And again, I hope that I will see you in next week's Sunday school lesson. I will see you next time.